So this is a sample company that QuickBooks provides, basically when you just install QuickBooks. And you can see there's a lot of stuff going on. You know, there's purchase orders, there's receiving inventory, there's all this stuff. And, you know, a lot of cases, maybe you don't need all that stuff. So, you know, one of the things that's nice about QuickBooks is you can just kind of go in and, you know, edit different things. If you're not using purchase orders, say, you can go into items of inventory and say, oh, I'm not using that stuff. So what I'll do then, just clean that up, you know, that screen. You can always turn it back on if, you know, all of a sudden you're growing and you need to do something. You know, that just cleans things up. Same thing with down here in the customer area. If you're not doing sales orders and estimates and all that sort of stuff. Go in there. And you can just, you know, I don't do that stuff. And kind of, you know, clean that up too. So, and one nice thing about QuickBooks too, it kind of has I call it the yellow brick road. It's really not yellow, but you know, it shows you kind of the path on how you should put things in, and how, you know, how to enter things. There's also, you know, one nice thing about QuickBooks is there's usually multiple ways to get somewhere or see something. See, we've got the vendor tab here, so you can look there at the vendor center. There's vendors here, open that up. There's also vendors here, open it up. So, you know, you can get to places in a lot of different ways. Like I said, you know, it kind of shows you, you know, how to go about doing things. There's some bills that are set up in here, so I'm just going to kind of backtrack a little bit. And see, there's here, you know, California telephone. There's a $45 bill, and that was saved. And now, if we go, let's say it's you know, 2 weeks later or whatever, we want to go and pay that bill. Well, we open it up, and we can go down, and we can find that. It'll pop up and say, okay, I want to pay California telephone or any other bills or whatever. So, so it kind of leads you through the process, and then, you know, you can either, you know, print checks through QuickBooks, or a lot of people say, I don't want to print my checks. I just want to write them by hand, enter them into QuickBooks. You can do that also. Some people say, you know, they want to do things more on a cash basis. They don't enter bills, pay bills. I still think it's a good idea to do it that way, because you get your timing better, your matching. So when you're entering the bill in on the date that, you know, it came in, or the date of the invoice, rather than entering the bill in just when I pay it. You know, maybe you pay it 2 weeks later, or a month later, or whatever, and that's when you enter it if you're just, you know, doing it that way. So some people will just, you know, they'll just go in and, you know, write checks. Looks just like a, you know, check. You go in and pick your vendor and the amount, and you know, you can enter in all your bills and payments. Every bank does it, but a lot of the major banks will, where you've got a bunch of transactions, you know, that you did during a month. Maybe you're out and you use your debit card a lot or whatever, and, you know, rather than entering things in as you go, once a week or once a month or whatever, you go out to your bank and then import all of the transactions. And then you still kind of go through and reconcile and make sure that, because they usually bring in information. Most of them are pretty good at recognizing by name, but you do want to make sure that, you know, you kind of go through each transaction, just make sure it's coming properly. And a lot of times too, you're going to want to, you know, might catch the vendor name, but you want to make sure that it's going to the right place, you know, an expense account or, you know,
Account
bank
category.
loan or whatever. You know, so you want to make sure that the distribution of that is proper, you know, if you're importing your transactions from a bank. But
You have to set up whichever, each different accounting subcategory for each thing that, if you import that in, how does it know what category to put it under?
You tell it.
you can tell it by vendor, and sometimes it'll remember, some you'll remember, like, you know, last time if I, you know, paid a bill from California Telephone,
They'll know what.
and the next time it comes in, it'll bring that up, but you still, I mean, you know, it could be something different, so you're gonna wanna review those transactions, and it's usually pretty quick. But again, you know, that's a little bit more after the fact. You've already done the transactions, now you're just, you know, importing them.
It's
So,
electronic bill pay.
yeah, so there's,
Payment
there's different things. I mean, you know, QuickBooks is, you know, pretty good that way. And some people just say, you know, I just kind of want to run things, I'm familiar with putting things in check register. So I want initially to just enter things in just like I was entering in a check register. So you can do it, you know, that way too. So, you know, you could, you know, pick your vendor or, yep.
You had mentioned that, you know, putting in the bills instead of just paying your checks, do a bill, pay it 4 weeks later, that's gonna help you out next year. Because next year, when you go and say, hey, how am I doing this year compared to last? If you put all your bills in when you actually get them, and you put your invoices in when you actually sell stuff, now you're comparing apples to apples. If you take a utility bill and you pay it in February, and then you put a bill, your February bill in February, next year when you look at it, you're gonna say, wow, I really had really high utilities the year before. So if you stick to they call it the accrual method, when you get the expense you're putting it in and when you get the bill you're putting it in, you have that timing. You have that timing of income to expense. So when you try to compare how you're doing 1 year compared to the next, it's gonna be apples to apples. I have clients that don't do it that way, and we sit down and try to analyze a financial statement. It just doesn't work. We can never walk out of there saying, hey, you guys are doing a good job, because we don't know. You know, it's being diligent about putting that stuff in. The other thing I was gonna say is if you go in to pay bills, you can show them where, you know, you can either print the checks right from QuickBooks, or you could do your electronic bill pay and then assign a check number to it. So you're putting in either a check number if you're handwriting it, or an EFT or a debit or whatever, down on the bottom there.
That was kind of my question, so it's not doing double duty, like.
So, yeah.
You know, you're setting it up to your bank and then you gotta set it up that way again, but it just doesn't.
There's a way to.
The only, I don't know if you'd be able to do an electronic check from QuickBooks. You'd still have to go out to the bank
But it
and
would
do
catch it
it.
in there if
But
it
in
was-
QuickBooks, you're putting it in there just like you hand wrote a check. But then when you have the assigned check number, you're just putting EFT or something that explains how that money came out of the checkbook.
Usually on your bank statement or wherever, it'll have some sort of a code, electronic code, and then you can, you know, use that as your reference number, your check number, whatever. So, you know, because you might be, you have a vendor that you're buying stuff all the time from, and to try and keep, you know, things separated and easier, you know, to track, you want to have some sort of a tracking mechanism that if you want to go back and look at something.